This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the Antoine Dupont of website builders. I'm gonna miss this man. The grumpy face of Irish exceptionalism. For over a decade, Peter O'Mahony has turned spite, rage, and, well, I haven't got anything else to do, into world-class rugby. In an era of cutting-edge advancements and real athletes, O'Mahony has dared to be old school. The crag carried in his face worth its weight in scrums and lineouts and mauls and bastardry. We don't know if Super Saturday 2024 gave us Peter O'Mahony's final game in the green and a little bit of white, but if it did, what a perfect, fitting way to go out, as Ireland ground out a win against a tough nut Scotland side to take the Six Nations title, success coming the hard way, just as Captain Pete would have wanted it. Because whilst Wales spewed up in Italy's face and England and France played out a silly, superb Super Saturday panto number, sandwiched in between them came a hell of a test match. An unbelievable defensive performance from Scotland, almost giving them a platform for a huge upset, all whilst Ireland battered away, confident of giving the home crowd 80% of the occasion they bought their tickets for all those weeks ago. So, with the tournament now closed, the title now decided, and Scotland now left with another year of pondering where the hell they go from here, how did Townsend's team push the side the South Africans were called the world number 2 so close? How did Ireland overcome them? And where does this put the Irish, both amongst the greats and going forwards? It's commonplace in rugby to describe a tight tactical match as like a game of chess. But what we saw on Saturday was something else altogether. Instead of the reactive, counteractive tactics of the Queen's Gambit, the board game inspiration board game, Townsend and Farrell found themselves in a game of Rugby Connect 4. Both coaches entering the Aviva with clear game plans, strategies to overcome the opposition, and instead of playing to each other's plan and trying to counteract the other and move and then counter move, both sides just committed to their approach 100% with only odd pauses to drop their little piece in blaze and cancel out the opponent. Ireland have the best attack in the world, something even South Africans in the comments will likely concede. Where other teams rely on unpredictable values like, flair or style, Andy Farrell, who's basically a pair of sensible trousers at this part of the beard, built this team on concepts that are repeatable, controllable, and coachable to create something beautiful. Namely, we're talking work rate, organisation, and speed. If you disrupt one, as Wales did in places during that game the other week, you can stress Ireland, but ultimately the attack will still be functioning enough to romp home to a win. However, if you can get to 2, as England and South Africa themselves have shown over the last year, you can put yourself in the box seat to beat them. It's like the triangle of fire that you're taught in school. If you starve the fire of oxygen, seeing the other side of the room becomes oh so possible. And so, Scotland, and in particular Steve Tandy, went searching for a way to quell the flame. And turns out, Tandy need look no further than his own home nation. In that World Cup, what happened quite recently but still feels like a bloody age ago, so long ago, Cymru, under head coach Warren Gatland and defence coach Mike Forshaw, pioneered a frankly ingenious defensive system that saw a Wales team struggling before and since overperform, winning the group that they weren't expected to exit. It went like thus. Instead of looking for dominant shots in contact or trying to disrupt the opposition at the breakdown, Wales instead threw 2 men into every single possible tackle, every tackle where they could manage it. One to catch the opponent, to kind of slow them down, stop the momentum, allowing the second man to wrap up the ball, keeping them on their feet. This not only totally negated the risk of high tackles, as nobody's going for big shots, nobody's looking to go higher than the ball, but it also slowed the pace of the ruck down immensely without doing anything risky at the breakdown that might also get penalised. Normally, a ball carrier takes a tackle and drops to the ground immediately, allowing for a fast clear out and the ball to be played away in, normally if you're Ireland, less than 3 seconds. You're looking at 1 to 2 seconds normally after the initial contact. In the Forshaw system, the idea is to hold the tackler up, so whilst the time between hitting the deck and playing away might remain fast, the time between contact and ball presentation is as long as possible. 4 or 5 seconds is commonplace. The ball is slowed down before anyone even arrives to clear out. If you look at the top 4 team performances in the World Cup with the slowest average ruck speed, in 3 of them, that team's opponent was Wales. It gave the Welsh defence so much time to set, not conceding a single try that didn't come from a 5-metre set piece or intercept after their opener against Fiji. Watching the Forshaw press take shape in real time last autumn felt like a minor revolution, akin to the Ninebus system that took over the world 4 years beforehand, a defensive innovation that could travel around the entire globe. And on Saturday, Steve Tandy proved himself once again one of the world's premier defence coaches by forgetting his own structures, leaving his own ego at the door, and dropping his own shapes and ideas to have Scotland adopt, for 80 minutes, the Welsh World Cup way, the Forshaw press. Doris here carries in from the line-out, but the ball reaches Archie next phase. Dempsey goes in first and Gilchrist follows, snatching for the ball. Carly calls them to release it to not try and form a maul, but the job is done. This ball takes contact to pass 12 seconds to recycle, 4 times Ireland's usual bare minimum. The Scottish defence is so perfectly set on next phase that when Turner's shot cuts Sheehan off from his support here, Christie, having primed for that double tackle, primed to be the second guy in, realises it's put him in perfect position to go in for the jackal. He reaches in, coming up with the ball. Over their 3 previous games, 66% of Ireland's rucks had taken 3 seconds or fewer. Against Scotland, that number through this press was brought down to 53%, the lowest it's been for more than 2 years, and resulting in Ireland's average ruck speed being slower than their opponent for the first time in any game from either of their back-to-back Six Nations. There were entire passages where Ireland didn't get a single 3-second ruck, such as here, Darge gets in, wrapping the ball up, and the moment the referee tells him, leave it, he lets go, the ruck taking 7 seconds. Ireland recycle it, and the slow ball allows Scotland to catch them behind the game line. Ferguson wrapping it up again, the ruck taking 8 seconds. The next phase includes some cheeky skullduggery from that lovable scam Peter O'Mahony, but the ruck still takes 11 seconds. The next phase, after another double tackle, 5 seconds. Phase after, it doesn't matter there's a little rumble on that they cross the game line, the ruck takes 7 seconds because Scotland got to the ball before it hit the ground. Ireland are on the back foot, defence set perfectly because the slow ball, the game line almost irrelevant, and it means when they go wide, the Scottish cover aplenty. Sheehan's offload finds Dempsey and Kinghorn can clear it into the 22. This allowed Scotland to totally negate the speed of Ireland's attack, taking that out completely. Yet the amazing thing was the knock-on effect it had on the other key components. Bundy, our key here, gets across the game line first phase, and when normally Ireland was followed up with a bunch of 2-second rucks, getting further and further forwards until big space opened up around, Scotland are smart. Andy Christie, who was exceptional, initially commits to JGP, but when Schumann makes a tackle on O'Mahony alone, he bounces off to join him, wriggling him round, and whilst Porter prevents him holding him up long, Christie can make an utter nuisance of himself. Porter and Burton both having come in, both tied right in, and so when Crowley does his patent attacking thing of, the way Ireland do, attacking the same areas over and over to try and use the work rate of those forwards getting back up to their feet, being in position to clear out twice, or even carry. Instead, those 3 Irish forwards that expect to be on their feet are on the floor, and Christie instead is up on his feet. He makes the initial contact, allowing his 2 teammates to finish it off. This ruck is a mess, 4 green bodies tied in, and it still takes 8 seconds. The ball gets wide, but 2 go high on low, and the ruck takes 7 seconds. And recognising this is a slow ball, there's nothing they can do, Crowley concedes and kicks it away. It's too long, ball bouncing dead, giving Scotland a 22-metre dropout, pushing Ireland another 30-odd metres back. By forcing Ireland to commit more bodies in the hope of speeding the ball up, or even securing it, preventing it getting turned over, Scotland took Ireland's work rate out of the game. Players overworking and unable to get into shape in time, hence disrupting the organisation. It was frankly a masterclass. I could go on so many examples throughout the entire 80 minutes, many of them involving the phenomenal Andy Christie, who for me was the best player on the pitch. The Irish system borderline malfunctioning in front of their eyes. Crowley kicked more of the ball in attacking positions in the first half alone than Sexton did the entirety of the 2023 Six Nations. It was a brilliant pull by Tandy, a superb plan, and executed brilliantly. Scotland giving us the clearest path to beating Andy Fowler's Ireland we've seen for a team that happens to be mortal rather than, the All Blacks or the Springboks. And yet, never one to be written off, Farrell did have plenty in response. Most notably, a website from Squarespace. Such an easy, simple to use all-in-one platform, it took Farrell no time at all to squeeze out a full, beautiful website full of photos of smart mouth guards. Fully aware Gregor wouldn't be able to resist the bait, he stuffed in videos, in galleries, in blog posts, all of this so easy to put together, taking him just minutes over half time, even adding a storefront where an unsuspecting coach may just find himself able to go and buy a few of the microchipped so-and-sos. Before he knew it, Townsend was so distracted by the website and by extension, the mouth guard's mere existence, he ignored the entire second half of the game. The only message Russell really receiving from his coach the entire second half was, how did Andy make this so good so fast? And yet the answer was simple. Finn knew it very well. It was Squarespace, and the answer could be yours if you head to the link in the description, use the offer code SquidRugby to save yourself some very lovely money. This tactic was huge for Wales in the World Cup, yet when it came to this year's Six Nations, Warren Gatland found himself forced to abandon the tactic because it had one major Achilles heel. Defending like that is absolutely bloody exhausting. By putting 2 men into every single tackle, you're essentially forcing your team to make twice as many tackles. And by not contesting the breakdown as well, rather waiting for an error or attempting old choke tackles, seeing if they can come off, you're going to go through more phases of defence than any other team who look to pilfer pills routinely. A World Cup warm-up camp gives you 4 months of conditioning for your team, able to prepare them to properly defend this way for a short burst run of 6 successive games. A Six Nations, on the other hand, probably gives you 2 weeks and then the run of games themselves. It does not give you this opportunity. And Andy Farrell knew that. Ireland made 2 small adjustments as the game went on. One, when the tactic first became evident around the 18-minute mark, Ireland started adapting how they carry. Dropping to deck early often became more of a feature. Ireland unworried about crossing the gain line if it allowed them quicker ball. Knowing a few 1-second rucks could greatly enhance their chances of opening things up further out. The other change, however, was even simpler. If your opponent is committing to the most exhausting tactic in the game to try and beat you, let them commit and just wait. Ireland's first half was unsettled, but I think unlike last year, it didn't look like nerves, but genuine stress caused by the opposition. The attack not firing and the only points coming from this overthrow to Dan Sheehan, a result of great pressure put on Scotland, followed by drastic bad luck. The Scots, weirdly, went the entire opening 4 games of this championship without a single pressure line-out in their own 22 they'd have to throw and then clear. As such, it's hard to find tape on what their exit play they're trying to run might have been, but I suspect this is a 4-man call, so they're looking to form a dummy maul here, then send it back to Russell, with these 2 acting as blockers, trying to block Sheehan at the tail from getting back to Russell. And as such, because their sole job is to block Sheehan and keep him far away, these players are deliberately far away from him so that Russell will be further, meaning they're in the worst possible position to get in and make the tackle and prevent Sheehan crossing the try line for one of the easiest tries you'll see all year. The second half, however, saw Ireland presented with plenty of scoring opportunities, and whilst they kicked the first to make it a 7-point buffer, once the threat of falling behind is minimised, a breakaway Scotland try is only equalising, Ireland decided to just go for the kill. I'm sure there were many, myself included, who spent that entire second half convinced O'Mahony ought to be pointing to the sticks a fair few times more, building a score, taking the shot in a game that felt so tight. Yet instead, time after time, Ireland chose maul, tap, violence, because they knew every tackle Scotland make counts from a Scottish perspective for 2. As O'Mahony put it after the game, Ireland's goal in those early stages of the second half was to put lead in the legs of Scotland to wear them right down. During the 26 minutes between kick-off in the second half and Andrew Porter's critical try, the ball was in Ireland's own half for a combined total of 1 minute and 28 seconds. And Ireland were in possession for about a minute of that time, just under around 50-odd seconds, essentially giving them 25 full, uninterrupted minutes of attack, and hence Scotland 25 minutes of uninterrupted defence. What we saw on Saturday was some of the smartest penalty decision making you'll ever see. Ireland fully aware Scotland weren't contesting at the breakdown, meaning possession would remain unlimited, lead would continuously enter the legs unless the play hit one of 2 outcomes, one being an Irish error or an Irish try. And so O'Mahony backed his team to make sure it wouldn't be an error. There's a belligerence to Ireland at their best, and Saturday showcased it beautifully. For most teams, kicking the point would have been the right decision, but Ireland know they can keep hold of the ball for 20 straight minutes. They're one of the best in the world at ball retention, and so they wore a Scotland team playing a tactical blinder right down until those tactics were irrelevant. To return to the sumo chess analogy I used quite a bit a few years ago and have kind of left in the wayside since, Scotland were nailing the Connect Four, but Ireland made them teeter on the edge of the ring as long as they did until a blow came to knock them right out, making their Connect Four prowess irrelevant. Andrew Porter's try is the sublime finale of an entire chapter of a critical match. Having withstood this earlier simple move, Sheehan diving at the line, Scotland set for a similar approach. Kelleher, Byrne and Baird form the initial pod, with Conan and Doris as a second decoy pod, then Gibson Park in the boot and Porter, Beelham and Van der Fleer in support. Ireland's first move might have been simple, but Leinster and Green Leinster have developed a real reputation over the last few years for fancy, intricate moves, designed to force the opposition to make quick, high-pressure decisions, leaving them too little time to make the kind of outright dominant shot required to prevent a guy with this kind of power burrowing over the line. Scotland knowing they need to watch closely because any of these 8 Gaelic wrecking balls could be flying right in their face. Kelleher taps and Baird gets really tight on his hooker's shoulder, forcing Ferguson to then jam in. Spotting extra weight would be required to stop him in his tracks. However, Kelleher turns his body ever so slightly, angling as though he's about to lob it, drop it to Gibson Park. The best passer on the Irish team, a guy who, if he gets the ball in a situation, anything can open up. The ball can open either wing just very easily and very quickly. And so, Scotland gamble on stopping him, on targeting JGP. But Kelleher instead goes out the back. A beautiful flick reverse pass to Porter, who starts left and runs a lovely delayed angle behind JGP, getting a one-on-one carry of Dempsey, largely thanks to Kelleher installing himself as a blocker in the play. And sure enough, Scotland are left without enough time to get that dominant hit on Porter, denied through intelligent, careful planning and superb execution. The gap Ireland exploit for this try, this critical try, this winning try, the try that made all the difference, was this big. Like James Haskell and Newt, we're talking at most 2 inches. In the last year, we've seen former Scotland and Springboks assistant coach Richie Gray work the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL and essentially introduce mauling to America's forward pass time. And this move, frankly, feels more NFL inspired than Lewis Rees-Zammit's Christmas list. A short yardage play designed to eke out inches to kind of get the team going back forward, with great thought having gone into how you make the aspects of NFL that couldn't work in rugby, namely blockers, when you're not allowed to take someone out and you're allowed to tackle the guy with the ball, just about legal in rugby union, namely using the previous ball carrier as the blocker. In the Six Nations, where Scotland have consistently shot themselves in the foot, be it through game management against France, penalty count against Italy, or utter meltdown in the second half against Wales, weirdly, Saturday may have been the closest Scotland have come this Six Nations to an 80-minute performance. Just Ireland forced them to have that fantastic performance on their green terms. This wasn't a case of a great team playing badly and still winning from an Irish perspective for me, but rather a side who can adapt to win any game and know how to beat any opponent, playing a tactical blinder to negate a team who, in turn, had worked them out. It was a real showcase of how Ireland can adapt, how they can change, and how they can win any style of game. And yet, for Scotland, it was stuffed with so many smart moments on top of the general tactical approach. Here, 2 Irish players dawdle offside, and when Carley doesn't stick his arm out, figuring they'll have no impact on the play if it's going wide, Finn abandons his plan and causes the carry straight into them, making it impossible for the referee to avoid giving a penalty, which Russell then promptly knocks over for 3 points himself. And their best try scoring chance, the first 70 minutes before Hugh Jones went bullshit mode, came from a brilliant bit of work by Rory Darge and Andy Christie. Darge here spotting low is heading into the pocket, and knowing how often Ireland kick off him, especially in the 22, Darge points him out to Christie, the quicker man, and gets him to line up and communicates the entire way, telling him when to time his run, communicating, allowing Christie to get up in his face and charge it down. Darge, meanwhile, is the only player running a support line, expecting the charge down to be coming. And sure enough, when it does, it's a less cruel bounce away from putting Scotland 5-0 up. This tournament ultimately came down to a game between the only 2 sides not in some stage of rebuilding, something perhaps fitting and probably should have been predictable in equal measure. Yet now the competition is closed, now it's come to an end. I can't shake the feeling that we haven't learnt a lot about either team. Ireland are still excellent, exceptional, sublime on attack, smart, with only the very occasional issues in the last 5 minutes of shutting down tight games, if they haven't been able to overpower the opponent in the 10-15 minutes before that. And Scotland are still a weird side. Gregor Townsend's team have one of the highest ceilings in this Six Nations, and yet they're just so fond of making cheeky trips down to the basement and living there for a little while. It's hard to quantify, frankly, where Scotland are at, and even harder to say where they're going, and I suspect Gregor Townsend is probably hitting the point where he's got a few question marks over how they actually get there. But hope is far from lost. This Saturday, the Six Nations was won the hard way. Ireland deserving victors of the game and ultimately the championship, leaving this man lifting the trophy aloft on what might be his final game in the green of not Leinster. Potentially, maybe going out just the way he always would have wanted. Thank you for watching that. I really hope you enjoyed it. I think you do as well.
I hope you enjoyed it more than he does.
Well, it's not a competition. That's the end of the Six Nations, the men's Six Nations. That is, we're going to do a weekly kind of show, aiming for anyway, on the women's Six Nations.
The real Six Nations, the good Six Nations.
And we'll kind of pick up on some more stuff. So we want to look at Italy in some depth, look at some other stuff. We've got a video of the Ospreys coming next week, all being well. If not, it'll be the week after. It'll be soon, coming very soon. Plus a whole bunch more stuff as we move into kind of, I guess, more unfiltered territory. And I hope there'll be lots of stuff that you enjoy in that time.
Make sure to watch the bloody Women's Six Nations because it's going to be very exciting. We're going to the Wales game against Scotland. Yep. I'm very excited. You're very excited.
I'm very excited.
And it's going to be really good. So watch it or else the rugby people will come for you.
They will, and they do it. They come for you and you won't know what happens.
You don't want to know.
Rugby.
You know, if it was my last one, it's not a bad one to go out on, you know what I mean?